Cities across the U.S. are in financial trouble.
I think we can all agree on that we're broke.
We're seeing sales tax come down, we're seeing business tax come down.
The European Union is sounding alarm bells, warning every Western power and even the rest of the world. Super powerful Western countries are losing control. You see, Russia and China are orchestrating strategic moves and partnerships that challenge the established norms. They are playing 4D chess on a global scale. This is not just about trades anymore. It is about creating a new world order with them on top, leading international relations and politics. The rest of the world is scrambling to keep up with their tempo. Let me explain. What's happening? Well, we're living in an era where the old rules are being tossed out the window. Russia and China aren't content with playing second fiddle anymore. There is a change coming, and let me tell you, it's not a subtle change. It's like they've cranked the volume to 11 and are daring anyone to tell them to turn it down. The result? It's a challenge so big, so audacious, that it's making the United States and its allies in the West break out in a cold sweat. We're not just talking about a friendly competition here. This is a full-on power play that's redrawing the map of global influence. It's East versus West, old guard versus new challengers, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. This isn't just some abstract geopolitical chess match. The stakes are real and they affect every single one of us. The million-dollar question hanging in the air is, how the hell is this going to shape our world in the years to come? And how will the West lose control? Werner Hoyer, president of the European Investment Bank, has been closely watching the recent BRICS summit in South Africa, where leaders from Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa gathered. At this summit, Russia and China's influence within this bloc was palpable, marking a pivotal moment where decisions were made that could reshape international power dynamics. Werner is saying that the world, starting with small and developing countries, are allying with China. But if you thought BRICS was a scary concept for the Western ideology, then you probably don't know about the formation of the axis of upheaval. This formidable coalition, which is made up of China, Iran, Russia, and North Korea, signifies a pivotal departure from the world order that has long been dominated by Western powers. You see, China and Russia are playing geopolitics like a grand chess master. On the economic front and building partnerships, they use their BRICS establishment. And when Western sanctions get a little too hot for them, they back each other up through the axis of upheaval. Almost like the world's rough nations banding together. But how did we get here? Let's start with BRICS. Let's rewind for a moment and explore how this captivating story began. The conception of BRICS stemmed from a yearning for a more equitable global governance landscape. The beginnings can be traced back to the mid-2000s when these countries recognized their swelling influence on the world economics radar. So, what were they aiming to achieve? The ambition is crystal clear. They wanted to foster collaboration across all fronts: economic development, political cooperation, and rich cultural exchanges. BRICS has set its sights on challenging the existing international order predominantly overseen by the West, targeting institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Many believe these organizations are outdated and biased in favor of developed nations. This push for reform is key in the BRICS narrative. Now, here's where the plot thickens. BRICS often emerges as a counterweight to the G7, which consists of the globe's major advanced economies. While G7 discussions primarily cater to the interests of wealthy nations, BRICS opens the floor to the diverse viewpoints of emerging economies. Remember, BRICS isn't just about economic discussions, it also delves deeply into political influence. For Western powers, this is scary. BRICS is increasingly viewed as a potential threat to the established Western dominance that has shaped our political, economic, and military landscapes. With their growing economic clout, these nations are becoming capable of leveraging their influence, making it harder for Western powers to dictate terms. It's a real concern. What happens if BRICS manages to tip the scales of power away from the traditional Western stronghold? And have you been keeping an eye on how BRICS nations are starting to flex their muscles within international organizations? Places like the United Nations and the World Trade Organization are now witnessing a growing assertiveness from these countries. They're not just sitting quietly anymore. They're actively pushing for reform and demanding a portion of the global conversation. As these nations rally together, they possess the power to confront and challenge Western narratives and policies. It's no wonder this shift is sending ripples of nervousness through Western capitals. Can you blame the West for being a bit on edge. I mean, BRICS has even expanded its membership to include 4 new countries: Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. This expansion marks a significant moment in the bloc's evolution, aiming to enhance its global influence and foster stronger cooperation among emerging economies. Each of these new members brings unique resources and strategic advantages to BRICS. For instance, Egypt and Ethiopia are key players in the African continent, with Ethiopia known for its growing economy and as a hub for African development initiatives. Iran adds its geopolitical significance, particularly in the Middle East, while the UAE brings substantial financial resources and a strategic location bridging East and West, which is a really big deal because BRICS is developing a secret weapon in their arsenal: the BRICS Bank. The emergence of the BRICS Bank, formerly recognized as the New Development Bank, signals a pivotal transformation in the realm of global finance. Its mission is nothing short of revolutionary. It seeks to provide a genuine alternative to the dominant Western financial bodies that have long dictated the rules of economic engagement. At the core of its operations lies a commitment to fund infrastructure projects and champion sustainable development, not just within the member countries, but extending its influence far beyond those borders. Diving deeper into its initiatives, one can't overlook the Trans-Asian Railway Network. This project isn't just another infrastructure proposal. It symbolizes the BRICS nation's serious dedication to fostering regional connectivity and collaboration. Imagine a railway system that interlinks numerous countries across Asia. This is the vision that the BRICS Bank is bringing to life. The goal? To facilitate trade and movement, creating a web of economic integration that addresses the urgent infrastructure deficits plaguing many developing nations today. This initiative perfectly exemplifies how the BRICS Bank aims to fill a critical void that has long been overlooked by established financial systems. As the wheels of global economic dynamics continue to turn, a noticeable trend has emerged. Developing countries are increasingly casting their gaze toward the BRICS nations for robust support and investment. This shift marks a significant reallocation of economic influence, showcasing a rapidly growing acknowledgement of the BRICS bloc as a formidable player in international finance. For years, entities like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have set the agenda in financing. However, the BRICS Bank is now stepping into the spotlight, offering developing nations a refreshing alternative that resonates with their aspirations for growth and genuine development. China and Russia are dead serious. They're actively pursuing agreements that span trade, technology, and security. We're looking at trade agreements that can redefine economic partnerships, technology sharing initiatives that can leapfrog innovation, and security collaborations that create a united front against common threats. So in light of this evolving financial landscape, long-standing institutions like the European Investment Bank find themselves facing a pressing need to adapt and innovate to stay competitive. The rise of the BRICS Bank is more than just a new player in the game. It's a clarion call for traditional lenders to rethink their strategies and redefine their relevance. Financial power is diversifying, and as BRICS Bank carves its niche in global finance, the implications will ripple throughout the international economic system. This shift won't merely prompt existing institutions to reconsider their methodologies. It cultivates an environment ripe for the emergence of a multipolar world order, redefining not only how money moves, but also how influence is wielded on the global stage. As this transformation unfolds, we're left with an urgent question. Will the established norms of finance adapt fast enough? Or are we witnessing the dawn of an entirely new era in economic power? If Western institutions keep on doing what they are doing soon, they will lose control. Let me break it down for you. Western investment and control over. There is a problem with the Western way of collaboration. These investments and control over developing countries are increasingly prompting these nations to seek out alternative alliances, particularly partnerships with China. This trend isn't just a passing phase. It's a response to a complex cocktail of factors that deeply influence how developing nations engage with global powers. First up is the issue of conditionality and control. Western investments frequently come with a laundry list of stringent requirements that touch on governance, human rights, and environmental standards. While these frameworks are designed with good intentions, aiming to foster responsible investment, they can often feel intrusive. Imagine being told how to manage your own affairs by someone miles away. It's no wonder that many developing nations perceive these conditions as constraints on their sovereignty. This frustration breeds a yearning for more flexible partnerships where they can maintain control over their own destiny. Adding fuel to the fire is the political influence that often accompanies Chinese Western investment. Countries in the West tend to leverage their financial clout to exert political pressure, which can foster an unsettling perception of neocolonialism. Developing nations caught in this web may eventually look towards China, which is frequently viewed as a less demanding partner in terms of governance and political conditions. This shift reflects an urgent desire to escape the limitations imposed by traditional Western alliances. The issue of debt and economic dependency ties closely into this narrative. Many developing countries find themselves grappling with unsustainable levels of debt, largely due to the high costs associated with Western loans and investments. The tangled web of repayment obligations can create a dependence on Western creditors, pushing these countries to explore alternative financing avenues, like those offered by China. Chinese investments often come with far fewer strings attached, making them tantalizingly attractive for nations in dire need of immediate capital for critical infrastructure and development projects. This is especially appealing in regions where Western investment has lagged, leaving a vacuum that China is eager to fill. Infrastructure needs are another pressing concern. Developing countries often face urgent requirements for significant investment in infrastructure to spur economic growth. However, Western investments frequently prioritize sectors that align more with donor interests, rather than addressing the immediate and pressing needs of local economies. In sharp contrast, Chinese investments often focus on transformative, large-scale infrastructure projects. Think roads, railways, and energy systems that have a direct and positive impact on development goals. This fundamental difference in focus reveals why many nations are leaning toward Chinese partnerships. Adding to the complexity are the perceived inequities inherent in trade practices. Then there's flexibility and speed of implementation, elements that can make or break investment opportunities. In short, China has a non-interference policy, which seems to resonate strongly with many developing countries. Unlike the prescriptive nature of many Western investment strategies, China emphasizes a hands-off approach, allowing nations to pursue their development goals without external pressure. This respect for sovereignty is a refreshing change for countries that have felt burdened by the demands of Western partnerships. Yet, make no mistake, the nuances of these relationships are layered with complexities. Concerns surrounding debt sustainability and equitable trade practices loom large in this intricate dance. A mixed bag. These partnerships, especially the growing relationships between China and African nations, are raising a wave of concerns, particularly around the crucial issues of debt sustainability and equitable trade practices. Numerous African countries are grappling with alarming levels of public debt, which surged to an eye-popping total of approximately $1.8 trillion by 2022. Can you imagine that? This staggering figure has sparked urgent debates about whether these debt levels can actually be sustained. Alarmingly, projections indicate that the debt-to-GDP ratios for several nations may surpass 60% in 2023. If that happens, what could it mean for their economies? From 2000 to 2022, China extended loans exceeding $170 billion to Africa. Sure, these loans have helped finance essential infrastructure projects, but there are serious questions about their long-term impacts on the financial health of these nations. Critics raise valid points regarding China's state-led investment model, claiming it often results in non-transparency, rampant corruption, and a glaring absence of private sector involvement. When these issues arise, they can make the debt crises in recipient countries even worse. Economic dependency and sovereignty is another increasingly pressing concern. While the notion of debt trap diplomacy has been widely debated, it is undeniable that the heavy reliance on Chinese loans has the potential to breed economic dependency. This isn't just about numbers, it's about national sovereignty. When developing nations become beholden to the interest of a foreign power, what does that mean for their autonomy and decision-making power on the global stage? As economic conditions fluctuate, the specter of loan defaults looms large. Many African countries are already teetering on the brink of debt distress, which could plunge them into severe economic crises. What then happens to their capacity to invest in development initiatives and social services? The consequences could be catastrophic. Moving on to equitable trade practices, we must address the imbalances in trade relationships between China and African nations. Often, these relationships tilt heavily in favor of Chinese interests, leading to trade terms that fall short of adequately benefiting local economies. This isn't just a minor oversight, it has the potential to inhibit sustainable development efforts. Moreover, the influx of Chinese goods and investments poses a significant threat to local industries in Africa. Many African businesses are struggling to compete, caught in a whirlwind of imported goods that can easily undercut them. This situation stifles local economic growth and hinders hinders the development of burgeoning domestic markets, leaving farmers and small business owners facing uphill battles. Now, I know what you are thinking. How bad can it be? Well, let's dissect it together. Why is this a big deal? Well, to understand the implications of these debt traps, just look at Sri Lanka. In 2007, Sri Lanka made a bold move by entering into an ambitious deal with China to construct the Hambantota port, a strategic project located in the southern region of the island nation. This grand venture was primarily financed through a hefty sum of Chinese loans, reaching around $1.5 billion. The Sri Lankan government envisioned this port as a vital hub for shipping and trade, a gateway that would drive economic growth. However, the reality turned out to be far more complicated. From the very beginning, the project was hampered by serious miscalculations, with officials overestimating both the anticipated traffic and revenue it would generate. As the years rolled on, the dire consequences of this agreement became glaringly apparent. By 2017, Sri Lanka found itself trapped in a web of overwhelming debt, unable to meet its financial obligations linked to the Hambantota port. In a desperate attempt to navigate this financial storm, the government made what many viewed as a catastrophic choice, leasing the port to a Chinese corporation, China Merchants Port Holdings, for an astonishing 99 years. This decision effectively handed over control of a critical national asset to a foreign entity, raising alarming questions about the sovereignty and autonomy of Sri Lanka's governance. The financial troubles stemming from the Hambantota port were not just a blip on the radar. They contributed to a larger, more pervasive economic crisis that gripped the country. With public debt skyrocketing to unsustainable levels, Sri Lanka experienced a severe economic downturn that rippled through every sector. Fast forward to 2022, and Sri Lanka had reached a breaking point. The nation declared bankruptcy, marking a historic nadir in its financial journey. The fallout from this economic unraveling didn't stay confined to boardrooms and government halls. It spilled out into the streets. The financial chaos triggered widespread protests across the nation, with citizens taking to the streets to voice their frustrations over skyrocketing inflation, crippling food shortages, and the government's evident inability to effectively manage the economy. In a dramatic climax to this upheaval, the president was forced to flee the country in July 2022 amidst intense public outcry, encapsulating the severity of the discontent brewing among the populace. The repercussions extended even further, affecting local industries that bore the brunt of the government's focus on servicing Chinese loans and prioritizing massive infrastructure endeavors like Hambantota. As financial resources were increasingly channeled into repaying debts, local businesses found themselves neglected, struggling to compete in a marketplace that seemed rigged against them. This neglect exacerbated unemployment rates and fueled economic instability, creating a vicious cycle of hardship for many citizens. But the impact of this saga was not limited to economic troubles. It also carried significant geopolitical ramifications. The loss of control over the Hambantota port did not go unnoticed in the region. Neighboring countries, particularly India, grew increasingly concerned about China's expanding influence in the Indian Ocean area. This shift in power dynamics raised alarms about national security and regional stability, leading to heightened tensions between the two giants, China and India, that could reshape the geopolitical landscape for years to come. You see, China uses this type of deals to grow. This is not just about giving loans and creating partnerships. It is about growing their influence. And here is where the axis of upheaval comes into play. So let's talk about it. Axis of upheaval. Let me take you back in time, back to the chaos of World War II, a time when the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, formed a fierce and determined coalition with one singular mission: global dominance. Their era was defined by unyielding determination and meticulous strategy, standing firmly against the formidable forces of the Allies. Swiftly leap to our modern moment, and you'll find a disturbing echo of that ominous alignment alive and well today, now known as the Axis of Upheaval. This coalition unites China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, nations that are not merely collaborating on military strategy, but are cultivating a shared resolve against what they perceive as Western domination. They gather around a table where their grievances against leading world powers, particularly the United States, shape the alliances they forge and the collaborations they pursue. too. There's an ever-present elephant in the room, the long-standing dominance of America. There's a visceral animosity simmering among these nations toward the pervasive influence of the United States. This animus frequently manifests in a military presence across foreign territories or through a barrage of economic sanctions that stymie their ambitions. The resentment brewing in these countries is a volatile concoction, blending burgeoning nationalism with an intense craving for sovereignty. This potent mix compels them to pursue partnerships that bolster their interests, crafting a unifying doctrine that propels them toward cooperative action against what they collectively perceive as Western imposition. Each member of the axis of upheaval is driven by its own strategic ambitions that guide its global actions. The Kremlin is laser focused on reclaiming its sphere of influence in Eastern Europe, deeming this mission essential. The relentless expansion of NATO is not merely a nuisance, it's viewed as a direct and existential threat to Russia's power. This perception prompts the Kremlin to adopt aggressive postures, seeking to reaffirm its presence and influence in this key geopolitical region. Meanwhile, Iran is fixated on solidifying its power in the Middle East. Faced with US sanctions and the competing ambitions of rivals like Saudi Arabia and Israel, Iran is pursuing expansionist policies that not only enhance its regional sway, but also help it adapt to an evolving geopolitical landscape. Across the waters, we find North Korea, a nation that has relentlessly cultivated its military capabilities as a formidable deterrent against perceived threats emanating from the United States and its allies. For Pyongyang, this aggressive militarization serves dual purposes. It's a survival tactic and a strategy for gaining respect on the global stage. Let's not overlook China either. This immense powerhouse is far from a passive observer, with aspirations reaching from Taiwan to the tensions-infused waters of the South China Sea. China is not only actively pursuing aggressive territorial claims, but is also expanding its Belt and Road Initiative. This dual approach not only enhances its geographical dominance, but also establishes economic power, positioning China as a serious competitor to US interests across the globe. Shifting our focus to the economic forces that underlie these alliances, it's essential to recognize that US sanctions have morphed into a double-edged sword. Intended to isolate these nations, the sanctions have, ironically, ignited a frenzy of collaboration among them. So what does this collaboration look like in practice? Consider US sanctions against Russia for its conduct in Ukraine, against Iran due to its nuclear ambitions, and against North Korea for its missile tests. These punitive measures have fostered an atmosphere of desperation rather than division, facilitating a sense of camaraderie. Instead of pulling these nations apart, the sanctions have encouraged them to band together, working in concert to counteract Western pressure. The shared ordeal of sanctions has created a powerful bond among these allied nations, transforming their collective adversity into robust partnerships. Resource sharing and technological collaboration have become standard operating procedure as they strategize and work together against a common adversary, ensuring their mutual survival through a web of interdependence. This situation serves as a poignant reminder. Sometimes hardship can give rise to unexpected unity, and don't be fooled into thinking that trade relations among these nations are stagnant. The exchange of resources and military supplies tells a compelling tale of sleek, strategic collaboration with substantial geopolitical implications. North Korea, renowned for its military production capabilities, has emerged as a significant supplier, delivering artillery and ammunition to allies like Russia. This partnership proves crucial as Russia remains entrenched in ongoing conflicts and seeks to enhance its military capability while minimizing reliance on its domestic production. Iran isn't sitting on the sidelines either. It is stepping up by supplying high-tech drones and missiles to its allies. These Iranian designs boast remarkable sophistication, providing not just technological enhancements, but significant operational advantages to nations like Russia, especially in active conflict zones such as Ukraine. And as for China, this economic titan is anything but passive. It brings a wealth of resources to the fray, investing significantly in these nations while also securing essential energy supplies for itself. For instance, China's procurement of energy from Iran is pivotal in meeting its ever-growing energy demands, all while enabling Iran to weather the storm of heavy sanctions. So there you have it. These are the reasons why Werner Hoyer, president of the European Investment Bank, is warning Western institutions. But what's your thoughts on this? Let's know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.